Alessandro, my friend, here at Beer Brackets, we are always about solving these ancient beer mysteries and also answering all these questions, these beer questions that are plaguing all of the beer explorers out there. And one of these questions, which we've touched on before, but I think deserves to be dove into in a much more detailed fashion, is the topic of IPAs. What do we want to talk about today? And let us know down below what you think in the comments. We really want to open this up to everybody. This is a topic that is very open-ended, so we want your opinions. Please let us know down below what you think. We're going to give you our opinions of what we think here. Over the past decade, why have IPAs really dominated not just the craft beer market, but in the past couple of years as well, the mainstream beer market? Right? I mean, you go to your local grocery store, you can find a good number of IPAs there on the shelf. So, my friend, what do you think? Let's start off this way. Why do you think IPAs have become so popular, or at least starting with microbrewers and now in the general beer drinking population?
That's an excellent question, and I'm sure, and I'm very curious to see what our viewers are going to think. But I'm
really curious too.
Yeah, right. I have my opinion, and I think it's mainly for two reasons. So the first one I attribute to more a historical reason, and I think it's because the craft. The craft beer market, or the craft beer movement, let's call it that, started as a little bit of a reaction to the at least here in the U.S., to this very big and brands that were, producing lager-like, very light flavor, very simple flavor, let's call them beer. Mm-hmm. And, one of the first beers and styles that was rediscovered was pale ales and India pale ales, so IPAs. So that's the first, I think, element. But then there's a second element, which, it's more relevant now. And there's so many different hop varieties that are being discovered and grown. And each one of them that comes out, has so many different aromas. And so, this gives, all of a sudden, a palette of different options that, the brewers now have on top of the malts that existed, right? So I think those are the two elements. But what do you think, my friend? What's your opinion on it?
I think you hit the nail on the head with the hops. I think experimenting with different types of hops and different types of hop flavors really has a lot to do with it. Because I think when you get down to what craft brewing is, that it's hard. I think you have a lot of people who are passionate about something, who want to experiment, and they want to create something that hasn't been done before. They want to push boundaries. So at the time, let's say probably right around a decade ago, when that whole boom in IPAs happened, I think it was really pushing a style of beer that people weren't familiar with. I remember the first time that I went to my corner store and saw an India Pale Ale on the shelf, and there was maybe one amongst a sea of 50, 60 different beers to choose from. I was like, what is this India Pale Ale? Is it from India? What is this? And I knew nothing about it. And I remember tasting it for the first time. It was so strong, and it was so powerful, and it was so intense when you're used to drinking lagers and pilsners. So I think part of it has to do also with the artistry of it, or the artisanal side of it, where maybe you have certain brewers who want to be creative and want to break away from the pack, and they want to do something that's a little different. And so they create something that might be take a little bit more practice to train your palate to appreciate something that has a little bit more depth of flavor to it, right? So I would imagine, and again, this is all our own speculation based on our own experience and our own knowledge of the beer world, so please let us know down below if you agree, disagree, what you think. But I think that is probably likely how it started. And also, this is another topic of conversation, but also the fact that lagering beer is a much more involved process that maybe some smaller microbreweries can't really tackle. So something like an IPA or a pale ale is a little bit more realistic for a smaller independent brewery to be able to approach. But I think that's part of it too. So I think what you mentioned about the hops and experimenting with the different variety of hops and all these new different variety of hops that have become available over time, combined with just wanting to push boundaries, wanting to be artistic, wanting to be creative, I think that's what sort of pushed them into the market. But one thing I want to ask you is, why do you think beer drinkers have really embraced them as being their beer of choice in a lot of cases over a lager or over a pilsner?
Well, I think that in a sense goes a little bit back to what I was saying, they started a little bit as a reaction to the macro brewers. So when you have to choose and you have on the shelf, at least again, like I'm talking about here in the U.S., like going back in the years, right? Like all the different like mass-produced lagers and light lagers, and all of a sudden you start seeing a little bit more of those like interesting styles that have
Yeah,
flavors and challenge you in a different way. I
I
think
know.
that kind of like became a sort of a flagship
Yeah.
drink for certain drinkers, and
Yep.
they've embraced that, like, and in a sense, like, because there's so many different ones, like, it becomes like interesting if you like the style. It's interesting to explore them. So there's a new one. Well, that means like it's probably going to be completely different because it's made with different hop varieties, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, there you go, everybody. Let us know down below what you think. Why do you think IPAs have become so popular? Why do you think they've infiltrated the market the way that they have and take up so much of a market share when you go to your local grocery store? Let us know down below if you agree with us. If you have any other theories, we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, do not forget to close your beer brackets. Cheers.
Never.